If you can bring the shame down and understand yourself more honestly and not feel like you're a mistake, because that's what shame is, the feeling that I'm a mistake, then you don't need to overcompensate. You don't need to feel arrogant. Why would you need to feel better than people if you don't feel really bad about yourself, you know? I think shame and arrogance are often related. I think if you use it as a coping mechanism for shame, the more shame you have on one side, the more arrogance you're gonna have on the other side. And I know that I deal with shame and I think that I have arrogance. You know, for example, I use whatever talents I have to compare myself to others, and if I feel my talents are greater than theirs, I'm better than them, which is a terrible thing because it disconnects me from people and it causes me to be more lonely and isolated. And if other people perceive this, you know, it might trigger their shame and it might make them feel more unhappy, and I don't want that. I think shame can cause people to do amazing things though. For example, a lot of overachievers probably have a lot of shame. I've basically thinking about some tweets and information I read where people that are climbing ladders in the corporate world really well, you know, things that are rewarded in our culture and seen as a great thing, and they can be, sometimes they're basically running from their shame. It's a coping mechanism there as well. You know, they can actually feel better about people because they are an exception to the majority, right? You know, they're not better. Nobody's better than anybody. We all have equal value, but yet shame persists. Another place it persists in our culture is minorities, I believe, have a lot of cultural projected shame on them. The further you are from the ideal in the culture, let's say straight, white, male, cisgendered, if you're a woman, if you're gay, if you're black, gender queer, or something like that, you express yourself differently, the more likely it is people will project their shame onto you. And that's really a terrible thing. Alok is somebody I follow on Instagram. They are non-binary, were assigned male at birth, you know, so they look like a man, but they wear what most people would call women's clothing, like dresses. They also happen to have a lot of body hair, and people in the comments of their photos are very mean. And Alok sometimes responds and says, you know, I'm sorry that you have a lot of shame and that you're triggered by my full and honest expression of myself. I hope that you can work on that and feel better about yourself. And I think Alok is completely on point. That's probably why Alok is very popular right now. They're speaking to something that has not been spoken to in the public discourse for probably really ever to this degree. Thanks to social media, it's possible. So I think it's just a huge problem that we need to be more open about because it just causes so much disconnection and suffering. There may be other coping mechanisms aside from arrogance for it. I'm really not sure what they would be. Imposter syndrome is perhaps a name for shame that is less scary. It's funny that I was talking about climbing ladders in the corporate world earlier because people that feel imposter syndrome, you know, they might be trying to cope for that shame like I mentioned earlier, and the way they can describe it is imposter syndrome, which might be an indication that that is what they're dealing with. Yeah, like I said, I think I feel a lot of shame and I feel a lot of arrogance and I freaking hate it. I really wish I could get rid of it. You know, I think that if you can bring the shame down and understand yourself more honestly and not feel like you're a mistake, because that's what shame is, the feeling that I'm a mistake, then you don't need to overcompensate. You don't need to feel arrogant. Why would you need to feel better than people if you don't feel really bad about yourself, you know? The goal should be to not feel bad about yourself in the context of shame. Like, you're not a mistake. Nobody is. So thanks for watching. I'm John Breyer. Peace.